Oh, you're here? On time? I'm sorry, my father said that you might be a little late, so I started reading until you got here. How long have I been here? Oh, not too long. I'm a princess. It's not like I have anything better to do. My father doesn't allow me to attend court meetings. Well, not yet anyway. He said in a year I could attend them as the cupbearer, but I'd rather not pour wine for my father's lords. With all the spare time I have as a princess, I read a lot, specifically history. I probably know more about this place and my family's history better than anyone. Now, where should we start off? How about the Royal Portrait Gallery? That's a perfect place to start a tour of a palace, if you ask me. You'll get to see the portraits of past emperors and empresses that lived here before me. But do be aware, the gallery is rather large, so make sure you stay close to me. I wouldn't want you to get lost in a room full of portraits. Ah, here we are. Now, some of these portraits are much older than others, so please be careful not to get close to them. Would you, care for a history lesson? I figured maybe you would want to know about the history of my family. Okay, how about I start from the beginning, yes? Okay, let's see. 250 years ago, the Ireston Empire was founded by my ancestor, Anthony Grevious, and his then fiancée, Elisa Montfort. A lot of the land of the Ireston Empire was originally bought from local farmers, and my ancestor even tried to buy the entire land of the continent from tribes in the west, but they refused to give him their land in exchange for money, as the land was sacred to them. So the western border was then created. As for the east, Menhir Monastery willingly became a part of the empire in exchange for funding by my family. As for the south, it only went so far until my ancestors' soldiers reached the thick and dense rainforests that were impossible to cut down. And as they traveled to the north, the weather seemed to become more and more harsh. So my ancestors built Cloudborough Castle as the furthest point in the north of the empire, and made it the family's winter castle. That is until, well, I'm sure you're familiar with it, as it is your family's home now. After the border of the empire was finalized and explored, my ancestor crowned himself emperor of the newly formed Ireston Empire, and married and crowned his empress, Eliza. Here is their first portrait as emperor and empress. It's in quite a very different style than what I'm used to, but it just shows the style of painting from that period. Anthony and Eliza had a daughter 2 years after their coronation, which they named Rhianna Grevious. However, that would be their only living child together. Eliza's second pregnancy was when Rhianna turned 14, but Eliza's second child was breech, and Antony made the decision to remove the child forcefully from the womb, which ultimately killed Eliza and the baby. The baby was a stillborn girl, which Antony had named Eliza after his late wife. This here is the young portrait of Rhianna and her mother. She kept a small copy of it in a locket after her mother passed, and she never took it off. Antony remarried in the spring and married the Lady Edith Talister, who gave him 4 more children, 2 sons and 2 daughters. But his sons mysteriously died in the cradle as young infants. Historians from that time period say that Rhianna became jealous of her brothers and knew that they would pass over her in the line of succession and had them poisoned in their sleep. But this was never proven to be true. Most believe that the boys just died in their sleep without any reason. Here's the portrait of Antony, Edith, and Antony's daughters. His sons died so young that no portrait was ever painted of the 2 of them before they died. Because both of his sons had died and Antony had no male brothers or cousins, he named his first daughter Rhianna, heir to the Ireston Empire. This scared Antony, however. He was the first emperor of the Ireston Empire and felt that if his daughter were to become empress, unless his daughter had a strong ruling husband. Antony met with the lords of the empire and the nobility until he found a man suitable to marry his daughter. That is when he met with House Langston. Lord Langston had a son, Francis, who was the same age as the emperor's daughter, Rhianna. However, Antony did not want to force this arrangement onto his daughter, so he made sure to hold parties in which the 2 of them could meet and get to know each other. On Rhianna's 18th birthday, her father threw a masquerade ball and invited the lords and nobility to try and make an impression on the young princess. Antony believed if the gods approved of the marriage between Rhianna and Francis, then the fate would bring the 2 together. As this was a masquerade ball, Rhianna wouldn't be able to judge the lords on their appearances, only their personality. Fun fact about her is that she was the only ruler of the Ireston Empire to choose their spouse based on personality and not appearance. Other rulers picked their spouses out of lineups of portraits, but not her. She was smart, not stupid. She knew looks could be deceiving. Antony was right, however. Fate brought Rhianna and Francis together, and they got on very well. But what Antony did not know at the time was Francis didn't want to get in the way when it came to Rhianna being the heir. He believed that the gods had made her heir for a reason, and that no man should interfere with the power the gods had bestowed upon her. This is Rhianna and Francis's first portrait together. This was painted at their wedding. It's said that Francis had to sit a lot while posing for the portrait, so the artist just painted Francis sitting. Have I had to pose for a portrait for a long time? Well, yes, many times actually. There are quite a few portraits of me in here that we'll get to later. When they were married and Rhianna became empress, Francis supported the decision of his wife and never tried to sway her into doing anything differently. He found the position of the ruler to be quite intimidating and sat himself as far away from the throne as possible. However, upon his wife's request, Francis would become regent whenever Rhianna was away for long periods of time if she was sick and when she was recovering after giving birth to their children. Francis was happy to do this for his wife, but would always communicate with her before he made any big decisions in regard to policy. Rihanna and Francis had 4 children together, 2 sons and 2 daughters. Her heir was her eldest son, Theric. Yes, one of my brothers is named Theric. Very good observation. Though the 2 of them differ quite a lot. My brother Theric is very free-spirited, while Emperor Theric was a very strict emperor. I've read that he was quite a mean, bitter ruler, and did not rule as long as his mother had. 'Tis a shame that his wife had to marry him, Lady Rain Wyatt. She was too good for him. Were there any other women to rule the Ireston Empire? Well, yes, matter of fact, my great-great-grandmother Seraphina became the 2nd ruling empress in the empire. Though she was not born into the family, she became empress after her husband died before their eldest son was of ruling age. So she became regent and was empress for about 12 years. I quite admire her portraits in the gallery. Sometimes I stare at them for hours in hopes that someday I'll be able to rule just as she did. My father says it was the gods' will for me to rule, but I lost a brother in the process. And if it wasn't for my great-great-grandmother, the laws of succession would have never changed. Thus, I would have never been the 2nd, and now, 1st in line to the throne. I'm not sure if I'll be a good empress or not. The 2 before me were most beloved by the people, but the people of the empire now barely know I exist. They call me the locked-away princess who's never allowed to leave the palace without many guards and knights by her side. I wish I could be free to leave the palace whenever I wanted without having to bring so many guards along. I wish to sneak out into the city and explore and meet people, learn how the people of the empire live. Perhaps there is a way. But never mind that. Come on now, we haven't even gotten to my favorite portraits yet. The portraits won't explain themselves. Now let's get on with it then.